Right, hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Excellent. Thank you for joining us for this session. We have a brilliant session ahead. My job is just to introduce our wonderful talkers, and then we will be doing a Q&A at the end of this session. So please make sure you bank any questions you have so we can do our best to answer them at the end of the session. So yeah, please, big round of applause for Colin and Thomas.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for coming. As you already read in the title, today we are going to talk about code. But that's not everything that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, the other equally meaningful part is how to build and scale an international team.
But first, please let us introduce ourselves. I'm Thomas, the technical product owner of the Lufthansa client, of the Mac client at the Lufthansa Group. And just a little disclaimer, none of this has any one of us done before, like talking at a stage at this scale. So please be gentle with us.
Thank you. Yeah, and my name is Colin. I'm assistant and application engineer for the same client.
But let us step back a little bit. It was more or less exactly 2 years ago when Colin and I first met, which by coincidence was at JNUC in lovely San Diego. I was casually walking around with my good friend Mark Harris, who's also here in the audience somewhere, and was still employed with a social media company that had a little blue bird as its logo. So we were casually walking around the Lego booth at the Jamf, you know, the little exhibition, and we were picking the Legos, and I overheard some chatter in German. And there was a group of Germans chatting. One of them was Colin. I briefly introduced myself. And yeah, so be careful who you talk to at the Lego booth, because I decided to leave that social media company that I mentioned before after a millionaire or billionaire acquired us. Also, the remainder of my team left as well.
Which eventually led to Thomas joining us at Lufthansa Industry Solutions.
As I started working at Lufthansa, I realized it is completely different than what I've done before. You have to see Lufthansa Industry Solutions as one of the over 300 subsidiaries of Lufthansa. And we are more a managed service provider than an internal IT department, because these 300 different entities that Lufthansa Group consists of, they have all their own unique challenges.
In 2022, Lufthansa Industry Solutions was tasked by the central IT department to develop a macOS client that would fit all these Lufthansa Group subsidiaries. This meant we would have to accommodate all the unique requirements when onboarding a new subsidiary to our new client called One More Thing, which brought the challenge most of you probably faced at one point, creating some sort of glue logic to connect the dots.
Historically, in my career, me and the teams I worked with used a lot of open source tools, mainly Bash and Python scripts. But when I joined Lufthansa Industry Solutions, I saw something unique. Colin managed to teach himself Swift and started developing some amazing in-house apps. Once I saw that, I saw this is so unique, we need to double down on it. When we got additional resources, one more system engineer, we decided to train or support. When we got additional resources to hire one more system engineer, we decided to train our current support staff to be better at managing Macs and do one thing that I've always wanted to do, hire a dedicated software engineer to help our team.
Yeah, please have a look at our wonderful team, which is distributed between Germany and Albania. In Germany, we have Christos, our head of IT and infrastructure at Lufthansa Industry Solutions. Also, there's Friedemann, who's also here at JNUC. He is responsible for the service management of our client. He's making sure that our stakeholders are happy and that our users don't just have to use our client, but want to use our client. Then there's Sebastian. We originally hired him for this project as a support engineer, but since he has also a background in app development, he's also working with us as an application engineer. And then there's Jeremy, who's also a support engineer, and he's tackling the biggest issues of our biggest client, which is ourselves, Lufthansa Industry Solutions.
In Albania, we have Altea, who's the before-mentioned software engineer we hired, Mikael and Andy. Mikael and Andy have a background in Apple Care support. They did support the Italian market from Albania before, and Altea used to program iOS apps for the banking sector.
And now it is our pleasure to introduce some of our custom-built in-house apps, which we like to call the L family. This family currently consists out of 6 apps, 4 of which we will show to you today. We will start with Leia and Luna, which stand for Lufthansa Enrollment Application and Lufthansa User Notification Application. Leia was the first app our team ever developed. During the proof of concept phase of our new macOS client, we noticed that the most support tickets we received were questions that we already answered thoroughly in our onboarding guide, which we provided as a PDF document on our new clients. It had everything inside a user had to set up on their own to get ready for working within the Lufthansa Group environment. Connecting to Wi-Fi, setting up Outlook, accessing VPNs. So why did the users still have problems?
TLDR, users don't read.
So my colleague Friedemann and I sat together and had a 3-day workshop. We wanted to make the setup process more fun and engaging. We started by researching some open source tools that could help us with this. One of which was the IBM Notifier, which already has an onboarding UI. And while it's an amazing tool and it's kind of what we wanted, it did lack some of the features that we needed. In the end, we realized we just had to build something on our own. At the time, I had little to no experience with Swift, but after only 3 days, a lot of Googling, we had a working prototype ready. Now, Leia is a fundamental part of our user experience, and it's helping our users to set up their Macs with ease. We also included our love for aviation, so our users would feel right at home when setting up their new Macs. Furthermore, we can fully customize every step of the user journey to fulfill the needs of our respective subsidiaries. Later, Leia got a sister called Luna, which uses the same framework but can be triggered by a script to provide more variable information, like when we introduce new features to our clients or the user needs to take some kind of action.
For example, with the device compliance registration that the user needs to initiate themselves, this is like one of the things where we push them in that direction.
We got a lot of positive feedbacks by our users, and our support tickets were reduced tremendously.
This made us wonder, are there more problems that we can solve with code?
Yes. And this is where Luma was created, the Lufthansa utility for Mac administration. And yes, we were supported by AI with coming up with these names. This app was developed by our colleague Altea from Albania. As Thomas mentioned, we have a very unique and complex environment, and we needed a tool to easily perform certain workflows in Jamf Pro. We were inspired by Armin Briegel's talk from 2 years ago at JNUC 2022 about using Swift in the combination with this Jamf Pro API. Based on that, Altea started developing this amazing tool. It heavily utilizes the Jamf Pro API and makes it easy for us to reassign Macs between Lufthansa subsidiaries, import invoice data from our suppliers, bulk assigning users to user groups, providing firewall keys to users, troubleshooting devices during support, and much more.
Lastly, we have LIA, the Lufthansa Internet Application. During our POC, we introduced something called company apps. So company apps are basically like little web apps that we used a tool called Natifier, some of you probably know it, to create. So the new users have everything at their fingertips, like payroll information, other internal resources, stuff like that. It's in a company that is as big as ours, it's very, very crucial for new starters to have like all these things at their fingertips right in the beginning. So company apps were very successful, but Natifier basically just creates Electron apps. And as most of you probably know, Electron apps have their own unique challenges. They are huge in size. Like, it's crazy. You basically deploy a web browser with any given application that you package with Natifier. Also, they are outdated basically every other week. So either the user gets like annoying pop-up like that, or we have to repackage and reprovision these apps and redistribute them to the users. This is really not ideal. And the last thing that is probably the most crucial is that Electron apps are not the best security-wise. If you've been to Patrick Wall's amazing Objective by the Sea last year, you see there are lots of security breaches in Electron apps, which comes back to the nature of things that they all ship like a web browser within like their app bundle. So we really wanted to get rid of that.
And again, we decided to create something more better suited to our environment. This time, our colleague Sebastian was tasked with creating our own framework. And like with all our other tools, we kept it macOS native and used WebKit. Now, the company apps are much smaller. They're only 0.2% the size of an Electron app. They are updated now with the macOS updates, so there's no need for us to repackage them every week. And since it's our own framework, we can fully customize it based on our needs. LIA is the perfect example of how a simple idea can have a very positive impact for our users, as well as for our IT department.
As you can see, there are lots of possibilities where you can use code to create a better user experience. But it all comes down to hiring a diverse team.
For example, Altea, who had, prior to working with us, no experience with macOS management.
Using native frameworks.
We showed with LIA how switching to a native framework can drastically reduce file sizes.
Getting the most out of the tools that you already have in use.
The Jamf Pro API is very extensive. Have a look at it. I recommend using Armin's talk from 2 years ago as an entry point.
And most importantly,
saying yes to code. Thank you.
Thank you. So we got time for questions. If anybody wants to answer questions, please.
I hope we have.
There should be a host that has a microphone or something like that. There.
In the back.
So please just. It's very bright up here. I can't see most of you without.
Hi, Thomas and Colin. Thank you so much. That was really, really inspirational to see. We also develop a few macOS apps internally at our organization. And one of the challenges has been shepherding those apps through the information security review process. So can you speak a little bit to how you've worked with Lufthansa's information security people to provide the assurances your organization needs? Thank you.
OK, I think I'd take this one. So we have a regular meeting with our security architects. And you just saw Luma, the tool that we use for our support. And daily tasks. It does like a lot of API calls. And I review every single API call with the security architects. So you really need to onboard them very early. You need to tell them upfront what you are trying to do. And you need to be very crystal clear. This worked for us. Like we work in a very heavily regulated industry, so security is like always on the fence. But just try to get them in the boat, get them on your side. Like for us, it was key to implement like all of their practices that the Windows client failed to. So we are friends with them. So they do us favors and they're nice to us. So just be nice to your security folks. But yeah, but be very, very vocal and clear. Like be very verbose in what you're doing. Like don't go there and tell them, yeah, I want to do this, whatever. Yeah. Tell them, okay, we do this, we use these API calls, and that's it. Like be very specific of what you want. Don't be like super general. Be very specific and tell them what you want. Then
also,
it will work.
We try to use least privileges with all our API users. And I think that also helped.
Yeah. For example, like every user has a dedicated API user for Luma, like every single user, so we can revoke that access for that particular user. So we really try to think security first, like not last. So you should also do that. Like always have security in mind when you try to develop something. Because somebody needs to approve it. And you don't want a cowboy like an app that is like super, super, even though we're in Tennessee, you don't want to cowboy an app that is crucial to your operation without asking security, because this will backfire, believe me. Not that I've done that before. Who else? I hope this answered the question, by the way.
Thanks, Thomas and Colin. I wanted to ask, as someone who pretty much only knows Bash, what would be your best tips for learning something new like Swift?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
I think I understand. Google is free. Use ChatGPT. It also helps a lot because it also explains like why it's coding that the way it is. Mm-hmm. It isn't perfect by any means, but it does help. And again, take a look at Armin's talk from 2 years ago. It's very, very helpful. He also has, for this talk, multiple blog posts. Like it's a series where he explains like every detail. It's pretty great. It's very helpful.
Also in regards to Swift, there are like lots of resources from Apple that you can
Apple is like trying a lot to help people to get on with Swift. And I think it's quite a good language for beginners.
Yeah. More questions?
Yeah, I also was at the chat that Armin did in San Diego. I thought it was fantastic. So we're kind of at our organization in the beginnings of doing kind of the same thing you are. My question to you is, if you are using OAuth with a client ID and client secret that can be rotated, how do you guys address rotating client secrets without a recompile of the Swift app?
For us, it's, especially for Luma, the user has to put in the client secret as a login. Yeah. So we do not compile it into our code, and then it's stored in the macOS keychain. So that's our solution.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's also, by the way, I think in Armin's blog post, how to do that.
Yeah. So basically, when you set up Luma the first time as like an admin user, you go into the settings, you put in your API key and the credentials, and that's it. And this was one of the requirements by security, to just like go back on the security question from earlier on, because you really have to have like very clear privileges for what a person can do. You don't use service users for something like that. Never ever do that. It's a very bad idea. And you need to be able to revoke all of the rights that you give to like any API user at any given time. That's very, very critical. Especially like with Luma, you can access firewall keys, for example, which is like a huge, huge, huge security risk. So.
Yep. But we also designed the groups in the Jamf user settings so that we can assign like different levels of access to different people. So not everyone has access to firewall keys if they don't have to.
This, I think, a good example is like we have like tier 1 support, tier 2 support, and basically our team that does all the operations and development. And these are all like different API like set of rules. Like the tier 1 support has the least kind of privileges, then the tier 2, and then us, basically our team. So you should also, like when you design something like that, you should have tiers with like based on least privileges, where people only get the information and the privileges that they really need to do their job. Please.
Yes, so I was wondering why you decided to do a local application instead of maybe a web application, like where you can control the permissions with your identity provider instead of having to do the API keys directly with the users. It seems a bit insecure, but yeah.
I guess we also have the dream that someday we would port this app to the iPhone as well. And keeping things native also makes it easy for us to use Apple's UI language. And it's very easy to also build apps that are not just functional, but also look great.
Especially Colin has a very high level of detail to design. Like he's really designing all the stuff that you saw. He's very good with that. He's very good with SwiftUI. So yeah, we really want to make the apps both behave nice and look good at the same time.
Yeah, they also, especially for, maybe it doesn't like translate to Luma, the tool for the administration, but especially for user-facing application, we wanted to make it feel native to the client, so the users won't be irritated. Why is there a pop-up that I've never seen before?
Yeah, like our approach really is that all the tools that we build should not feel like strange to the users. They should all feel like natural, like if they were part of macOS to begin with. That's like the main design goal. We don't want to have something that looks not like it's part of macOS. Because this was also one of the cool things about this project. We built it up from the ground. So there was no prior art. We could just start anew. And this is why we were like, yeah, we could use all of these great tools, because there are like so many great tools on the market. And we use a lot of great open source tools and scripts as well. But we were also, okay, we have like these key components that we really need and that we want to have very, very nice looking and feeling very natural. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to be like Apple in a certain way, like with like the user communication and design.
Awesome. I'm coming up. We've got about 15 minutes left for any more questions.
Thank you. I was just wondering, did you run into any challenges while developing these tools? And in certain situations, did you run into limitations with Apple platforms where you might have been tempted to, I don't know, do other stuff, private APIs, stuff like that, or running Bash within your tools? Or just curious about your journey there.
Yeah, of course. But I think since we have this pretty diverse team of like people with different backgrounds in app engineering, we could help each other out there. And so far, we always find some sort of a solution. Maybe it's not always perfect, so we need to take a look at it again and make it better. But so far, it works. And especially for me, when I developed the enrollment application, I had no idea of what I was doing, and I would do it completely different. I would start from scratch now. But as long as it works, it works.
On another note, what you're saying, where we are trying not to use, and I think we do not use any undocumented APIs. We don't want our stuff to break, because if we know something is deprecated by Apple or is not supported officially, we would not touch it, even though it would be a shortcut. Because just don't do these shortcuts. You will regret it in the end, believe me. So we always try to only use supported APIs, supported calls, everything that is, well documented by Apple and will hopefully be around the next 2 OS releases.
But you never know.
But you never know with Apple, yes. So
I think there was someone here in the front.
How many total devices are you guys supporting, and what's the total number of staff for those devices, like tier 1 through up to engineering?
you saw our entire team. We have for tier 1 the general Lufthansa help desk that basically takes care of all the nearly 100,000 Lufthansa employees. They are like the tier 1, but they basically just open up a ticket, see if it's
in the knowledge base, if they can fix it.
Yeah, or if the user maybe just forgot their password for their groupware, then they will just reset that. But in general, you saw the entire team. That's all of us. There's no more. Client-wise, I have to say we are just at the very beginning. At the beginning of the year, we started going live. Before that, last year, we were a POC, and we're just over 1,000 clients. That's not a lot. Like in previous companies, I had much more clients to deal with, but this is just the beginning. It's very, as I mentioned before, it's very complicated because every of those subsidiaries, and this is basically where Friedemann comes into. He's talking to all the different subsidiaries and he's trying to onboard them because there's you really have to fight to get Max into people's hands. And we are very happy to have him to do the good fight, But you really need to find people that are really into Apple to support you. Otherwise, they will just tell you, oh no, it's so expensive and we don't use it. We use Windows devices for the last 30 years. Why should we bother? All these usual talking points. But yeah, so we hope to be at 1,500 clients at the end of this year. Hopefully 2,000 by the end of next year. But this is all speculation up in the air. If you see Friedemann, he can probably tell you more about that than I.
Yeah.
One more question about your apps. How do you, well, first off, I guess, do you have any audit requirements for the people who are using your app as to logging who retrieved a file vault password or whether any other actions that need to be audited internally, and how do you address those with any logging from your apps?
I think Jamf does that already. So you can always have a look which API user retrieved a firewall key in Jamf.
I was just as an example, do you have any other logging that you like to have internally to address who's using the app or who's...
No, but as I mentioned before, every user that uses, for example, Luma, I think you're referring to Luma, the Mac admins utility, they all have an individual API key, and all the operations that this individual API does is recorded within Jamf, so we can review that.
Oh, okay, so you're doing one-to-one service tech, client IDC.
Yes. We don't have a service account or anything like that.
Nope.
It's all of our colleagues that you saw, they have all their separate API key. The folks that do the first level support, I think 3 or 4 of them are onboarded and have Macs. They also have their own API key.
Okay, yes, the one-to-one answers a lot. Thank you.
Yep.
This also ties into playing well with security, because this was one of the conditions that we were dealing with security, that we do it this way, that we have dedicated one-on-one deployments of API keys for users and API users.
Hi. Thanks for a good talk. As you said towards the start, users don't read. So I wanted to ask, how do you drive adoption around these apps? Maybe particularly the notification ones. And has your support team seen a reduction in inbound as a result of these tools being deployed onto Macs?
You were asking about the support for the tools that we deploy?
No, so the notification one, or the second tool you touched on? Luna.
Luna.
Yeah. Because I guess that will throw up a big box, and people may click that away.
Sorry, I didn't get that acoustically.
I didn't ask the question, sorry.
I may have misunderstood that. By deploying these tools, have you from your support team and ops team, have they seen a reduction in inbound as a result of this? And that's basically the question.
Okay, the production impact, yes. So the folks that are working on the support, the second level support specifically, for them it's much, much easier to, for example, get a firewall key. So they have much more time on their hands to support the individual users because they need less time, less clicks in Jamf. This is why we built it in the first place, to be honest. But we have great feedback from the users. There are not that many users using Luma, to be honest. It's 6 users. And us. So that's not like a huge demographic. But all of them are so far happy, and if they need something, we evaluate and then we build it into, and then we get it security proofed.
Yeah, that's the great thing about owning your own tools. Yeah. You can adjust based on your needs.
Yeah. And this is basically key of our talk. Like if you build something, you own it. And this brings like lots of responsibilities, but it even gives you more possibilities than responsibilities. At least this is what we think.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be Swift. It could be anything.
Yeah, it can be anything. Like if you want to do something in Python, that's great. It's an amazing language. I love it. But for us, our approach was we're doing something completely new where we don't have anything attached to it. And Colin already was very, very good with Swift, or not very, very good in the beginning, but now he definitely is. So we were just like, okay, just use Swift because it's the most native way. And as most of you probably know, as you've been doing the job for quite some time, you have to go with Apple and do it the Apple way. Otherwise, yeah, you can probably find another job pretty soon. So we were deciding, okay, Apple is betting on Swift, and that's the supported language. It's easier. Like, for example, Python, you have to deploy your own Python. Everybody probably does that in this room to have like some sort of tooling working. But with our tools, we do not have to deploy anything. We will eventually have to deploy Python when we want to use something that relies on Python. But so far, everything that we build just needs macOS, nothing else, no dependencies. So that's pretty cool, I think. This is why we choose Swift. This is why we choose this native-first approach. Cool.
I feel like a lot of companies reach a point where they're looking at IBM Notifier and Dep Notify and all of that, and feel a little bit of dissatisfaction with that. And obviously, you did to create the apps that you've created. Can you talk a little bit about the choices that you made as far as like, what needs you had and what design choices you made to address those needs with these new tools?
It was very hard to understand that, sorry.
I understood Dep Notifier. I can tell you we are using
What problems did you have with the existing tooling, and what design choices did you make to fix those with the tools that you wrote instead?
Which design choice we did make to fix what? Sorry, there's lots of echo and the sound is not really great here.
Yeah, sorry. He was asking specifically, there's a lot of tools that already exist in the industry.
Yeah.
IBM Notifier, Dep Notify. When you decided to move forward with building this new tool, why did you choose that over the existing tools that exist?
Okay, now simply because it was not exactly the way we needed it to be, and it was just missing like these features that we wanted out of it. And we also wanted the flexibility to change something later on. What you also could do is just fork an existing application if it's open source and then build upon it. But we thought when we're already would do that, then why just be dependent on someone else? Why don't we just start from scratch and then design it exactly the way that we want it to be?
Also, as mentioned, we do use Dep Notifier, for example. We might build something in that space. We are still discussing that, basically monthly. But so far, Dep Notifier is good enough for us. It works well, and it works in conjunction with the other tools. So we do not exclusively only use our own tooling. We will definitely use more of our own tooling when we got time and resources. As I said, we are just live since the beginning of the year. The POC went on last year. So we are still at the beginning of the journey, but
we have so many ideas.
Yeah, we have a ton of ideas, very little resources, because now we're going into the operation. As we go into the operations, we also have to deal with operation stuff, because we are like, this is like sort of our DevOps approach that we are doing there. But the operational side in the last half year definitely took away lots of time that we would otherwise were able to spend in developing new solutions. But we will definitely, those are not the only apps, and those won't be the last apps that we developed. And we will definitely write more apps in Swift. We will probably also do something in Python when Python is the right language to do the job.
Awesome. We have about 4 minutes left, so I'm considering 2 more questions. Go ahead. Raise your hand also if you need another one. Did you turn it on?
Is it working?
There you go.
Yeah. Very inspirational, very great presentation. Thanks for that. But I'm just looking at the realistic side of client engineering teams, for example. Somebody does this tool, creates a zone tool for the team, for the company, then leaves the company. And that tool needs to be maintained. That creates a DevOps team to be created. In your case, obviously, you hired people, and you become a DevOps team, I think, which is great, but not for every company. I don't think it will work. I think there are some pros and cons to this. Creating your own tools and then relying on one person or one team. That person leaves, and the maintenance, the new OS doesn't work, etc., etc. I mean, that's kind of what came to my mind when I'm listening. I was inspired, definitely. I want to do something like this myself. But then I'm thinking, how is this going to affect the company? What's the benefit for the company? Meaning that as a team, you are definitely now you're a client engineering team, became a DevOps team. Is that correct?
Did you get any of that?
Just half of it.
Sorry. I heard DevOps and Ops and client.
So as you all transitioned from being client engineering as well as end-user computing services for your customer base, it sounds as though you've also transitioned to being now DevOps, where you are now creating internal development tools. What was that transition like, for one, and how does the company view you all building an internal tool set within IT?
That's a very interesting question.
Thank you.
It's only kind of DevOps.
It's our very own unique approach to DevOps. But to be honest, I think it's our DNA. We started off like that. This is like when I mentioned earlier that as soon as I got the idea of the team and what the team is capable of, and we got additional resources, I was like, for me, it was crystal clear that we definitely need to double down on the development side of things rather than just like using tools that are already there, because this was definitely a key strength of the team. So it definitely is not for every team, but if you have potential in your team, if you have the resources, then you can go for it. As what other people think, I think they all like our approach. Like, as a little bit of background, like Lufthansa Industry Solutions, the subsidiary that we are in, technically, is an IT consulting company. So we have lots of DevOps engineers and full stack engineers. So they all know about that. So I think this probably helps quite a lot. So this is probably one thing why they ask us to build this.
Yeah, and also I think especially for the user-facing applications, no one expected that when they moved to the new client, because at Lufthansa I think no one ever thought of this, being there for the user, not just providing clients, but actually making users want to use the client. And I think we're still pretty unique, but we hope to inspire people at our company and you as well.
Fantastic. That actually ends our session today. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Very enlightening. And
I have
yes,
one thing to say.
One more thing.
One more thing. We have merchandise. If you want some stickers, feel free to talk to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Also, if you got more questions, you
Yeah.
see us at the hallway, just ask. We are happy to answer your questions as long as we can and allowed to.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You got 15 minutes until your next session. Thank you.